we're mopping up. We're mopping up on a Monday with the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. Kim's gone. DJ Svilik's gone. What has Sean Barrett got to say about it equally? Stick or twist at second base? It sounds like the most obvious answer, but I don't think it is. So we're going to dig into that. Today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at MiamiMarlins_UK. You've listened to the pod, of course, hit subscribe. This is your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. It is Monday, the 23rd of October. By the way, guys, there is a YouTube channel. Make sure you head over there. Hit subscribe also while you were there. Leave comments also. Always fun and action-packed, I would say, in the comments, particularly the everydayers. I know exactly who you are. Every episode it goes live, immediately the comments from you guys. So I absolutely love you guys and appreciate you. Even though we are in the depths of October now, everyone is still tuning in on a daily basis. So I appreciate you guys. This episode is sponsored by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And I'm delighted to welcome in on a Monday, of course. It's the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. Sean, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, Pete. As you just said, it's crazy, isn't it? We're entering November soon, and there's still so much to talk about Marlins
Really
baseball. This is going to be a very busy off-season, and I'm sure you're going to be very thankful for that as you get into the depths of winter, giving you something to talk about every single day.
Absolutely. Do you remember, like, for those that maybe are haven't listened to this show for long and worked out, like, how the hell is Peter Pratt hosting this pod? And when did that start? And what's gone on? What happened to Aaron Layton? He was amazing. But for those that don't remember or weren't around and listening at that point, I started this pod 2 years ago, pretty much approaching 2 years to the day, I'd say, but getting close to that stage. And pretty much within, I think, a day and a half of saying, yes, I'm going to commit to a daily pod. 5 episodes a week covering the Marlins over in the UK. Then the lockout started, and I suddenly realized that was going to be really challenging. So to your point, Sean, the Marlins and the drama of covering the Miami Marlins for a daily podcaster, we love it. We love the drama. I don't sometimes enjoy the direction that we go in, but the drama is nevertheless fun and topical and emotive, let's say. So we can be thankful for that. And there's going to be a lot to do. Like you mentioned, like we think of front office vacancies. There's at least 3 of them that I can think of at the top of my head now that Bruce is going to have to, backfill. Sean, we spoke a week ago. It was an emergency pod. Kim Ang parted ways with the Marlins. Obviously, there's been further kind of information shared. There's been other moves made in terms of DJ Svilik, et cetera, et cetera. So, I thought it was a good time for us to kind of mop it up and for you to come and share your thoughts as well. Like, where's your head at now with how things have played out in the last week? Obviously, a week ago, we talked about it. Surprising news in many ways, but the differences of opinion were there. Kim wasn't bought in. Kim moves on. It seems that the differences, and we kind of touch on this too, that like we felt there was like some obvious areas where those differences were going to have occurred. And so, yeah, week on, how do you reflect on how this has all gone down?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my opinions on Kim were that I was high on Kim, always was, and always will be, I guess. But we won't get into that too much because we did a whole pod on that. But yeah, obviously, DJ Svilik's gone as well now, so it's a real clearing of the decks, isn't it? Yeah. You're going to bring in a president of baseball operations, a GM, a scouting director. This is a seismic difference that the team are going to go in as far as directions going forwards. And to a certain degree, Bruce has got a lot on his table, hasn't he? Because it's going to be him making the decisions. He'll have people that he trusts inside the organization that are going to give him help and point him in the right direction. Because ultimately, like he says he's a baseball fan. He says he's followed baseball. He's a Marlins fan, but 9 times out of 10, you have to say that, don't you? When you take over the team.
You do.
So he's really going to have to flex his baseball knowledge now in building this, because it's all well and good clearing the decks and bringing in a different voice and a different direction, but it's not to say that that's going to work either. So you've got to do this right. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes about it, and it's surprising to me that this is a direction he wanted to go in with evidently clearly no clear idea of what he wanted to do as far as who he was going to bring in. My thought was that when he said to Kim, I'm bringing in a president of baseball operations ahead of you or over you, that he had an idea of who that was going to be. And since then, a lot of people have talked about the idea that he needs to cast a wide net. He needs to have a real thorough go through the interview situation. But of course he does. But it would have been nice to have him not blow it all up with no obvious idea of what he wants to do. But we'll see. I mean, ultimately, we're both still Marlins fans. We're both going to follow them, ride or die. So I hope he gets it right. How confident I am in that is maybe slightly different.
How appealing do you think this job is right now? Let's just take the president of baseball ops situation, because I think what will happen likely will be president of baseball ops. That's the first domino, right? And then effectively their role becomes to work out who's going to be a GM and who's going to be a scouting director. So it has to start with that new role, or backfilling that role that was kind of vacated by, in effect, Derek Jeter and Mike Hill, I guess. But how appealing is that role at this point, do we think? Like, how many people are going to be jumping to have an interview for that with Bruce? We've obviously seen, like, there's other organizations that are trying to backfill some of their front office positions. They're having a struggle as well. So I'm intrigued, like, what kind of a proposition are the 2024 Miami Marlins coming off a postseason, a great season, but no Sandy Alcantara? You know, there's going to be some roster constraints. The farm system's not looking great. Like, you know, how do you place this one in terms of desirability at this point?
Well, you're not really selling it to me right now, are you?
And I'm a salesman as well, so I'm struggling with this one.
I think it is a case of, look, if there are people out there that want to be a GM that aren't getting the opportunities, that's kind of what the Marlins are going to be getting, isn't it? It's the same with free agency, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're not going to get the tier one free agents. You're going to get the guys that can't get a role anywhere else. And that doesn't really sound very appealing. So the way that the Marlins are going to have to, or Bruce is going to have to play it, is go with those younger guys, the slightly unproven guys. And that's why Kim was perfect, because she wasn't young or unproven. She had a clear hurdle that was getting in her way to a role that she deserves to have. So in the same way that the Marlins did with Skip, first-time manager, but with experience in lesser roles as a bench coach and other roles, and obviously a former player, I think that's what the Marlins are going to have to do. They're going to have to go young, but they're going to have to go with, you know, and we see it all the time in other sports. NFL is a perfect example where you see these young GMs and these young coaches come in, and they're brilliant. So hopefully Bruce can strike it rich and get in that young guy that is perfect for them, because I think anyone that's got a resume that's deserving of being a GM role is probably either going to go for one of the other roles that's available at the moment, or maybe wait for the next cycle. Because if it's your one and done opportunity to get a role, maybe the Marlins at this current point is not really the most flattering of roles.
Yeah, I'm going to work on that sales pitch, by the way. That's going to be refined over the next couple of weeks or episodes, because, like, there's things to be excited about with the Marlins versus maybe some other roles or organizations. But, you know, it's fair to say that there's a job to do. There is a job to do. And I'm completely with you, though, Sean. I must say that the profile I see for, let's start with president of baseball ops, like, there was maybe some, you know, murmurings around, hey, let's go Mike Hill. Let's go kind of back to the old school. I don't think they go in that direction at all. I'm with you. I think they go for someone, you know, similar to the Skip Schumacher mold you've talked about, like someone that's young and hungry, switched on, and can take the club to the next level in some ways, but by doing things maybe slightly differently. It's going to be a punt. there's going to be some risk. There's a lot of risk in this. And so, likely, I think you'll see the financial package aligned to that risk element in that it's not going to be, a committed 3-year. It may even be like similar to Skip Schumacher in many ways of like a 2+1, which might. So again, the Marlins are kind of going to commit to someone, but there's a degree of risk. And in some ways, there's a degree of risk that sits for whoever's going to take this role. And so actually having these opt-outs or mutual options might be the way. This might be the modern way of a front office. I know it's kind of this option-heavy stuff has really kind of gone into the player salaries as well, but maybe it's the front office too. But yeah, I'm with you on this one, Sean. I think they get ultra creative. Carrying the conversation, talking about second base as well. Stick or twist at second base. For many people, they'll say the Marlins absolutely sticking on that one. But I think there's a few conversation, a few topic areas to get into. Before we do that, though, this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. And you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. You shouldn't have to. Gametime is there for you and is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And they have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. I love that. All in, baby. All-inclusive prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Also, the other thing, you can see that view from your seat before you buy. So you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You know exactly what you're going to see. Kind of, I guess. Depends on the sport. If you're going to sports, who knows? But also you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use this code, and it's all in caps, and it is Locked On MLB. And that gets you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code Locked On MLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, guys, you are back here with myself, Peter Pratt, and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, of course, because it's Monday. Sean, we've started this series since last week. I've started this series, and stick or twist. I'm a gambling man. I think Bruce Sherman will have to gamble on some of these front office hires. But being through catcher, we've been through first base. We're now into second base. Luis Arraez played a ton at second base this year. Let's start with Luis Arraez and at second base. Stick or twist from a Marlins perspective. Do you expect Luis Arraez to get the majority of playing time at second base in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be my understanding. Obviously, there's talk about, there's going to potentially be a hole at first base if Bell does not opted. And Luis Arraez obviously did move across there when he was with the Twins. But for me, I think that was a case of the Twins were loaded, and it was just a case of got to keep his bat in the lineup. Obviously, he was won the batting title for them in that year. For the Marlins, I don't see a viable option as far as there are guys that can go in and play at second base, but you've also got the hole at shortstop. So do you really want to take your one proven guy in the lineup out of the middle of the infield? I think you keep him there, and I think that's an obvious win. And if Bell isn't there at first base, you're going to kind of want a guy with a bit of thump in his bat at first base, aren't you? So keep Arraez at second base. I think that's a logical thing to do as long as Arraez is with the club. We all know that there's probably going to be a real bit rebuild in the next 2 to 4 years. And with Sandy out and a new president of baseball operations, a new GM, a new scouting director, how safe is Skip? We know that Kim and Skip were very high on each other, and we know that now through reporting, we know that Skip might not have been the first choice option for the rest of the people that are currently in the organization. So maybe new manager as well. Maybe this is the time that they say, let's push that button. Hopefully not. I really do hope not, because I think there is a core here that's good. But I think there's plenty of time in this offseason to beat that discussion to death.
There is definitely a lot of time, and there's going to be a lot of episodes. Just to tease it out to everyone, though, Sean has put it out there. A potential rebuild occurring in a 2 to 4 year period. For those that are wondering which direction I'm going to go with this offseason, I'm taking the under on the 2 to 4 year on that cycle, unfortunately. We're going to dig into that. There's tons to get into. in that topic area. And there's so many things going on with the Marlins right now, and we have to really kind of dig through and comb through the roster, the spend of that. Who's due for free agency, who's getting more expensive with arbitration, who's injured, what's the dead money sit. Like, there's so much to go into this roster. We're not going to do it today. Sean, you talked about Luis Arraez if he's with the organization. I'm not going to start there. Let me just put something else to you right now, because it's nailed on that Jorge Soler is going to be opting out. Clearly, the Marlins won't be re-signing him because they can't afford to be honest. So Soler's gone at this point. Frees up the DH spot. One thing I must say is Luis Arraez, the longer the year went on, the worse he got physically for various reasons. Just the toll of a year, it took its toll. Foul ball after foul ball onto his knees and his ankles and all sorts. But for me, as the year progressed, Luis Arraez, and obviously he rolled his ankle and he had these other issues, he just got banged up. More banged up visibly than I've ever seen any other player, to be honest with you, who's out there on a field in a postseason game. Could we enter a situation where Luis Arraez actually becomes more of the full-time DH for the Marlins? And they just, it's not your prototypical DH, but the reason I'm leaning this way and calling it out is A, to preserve Luis Arraez, who is your best hitter. Secondly, I really like Xavier Edwards. I really like the profile. I really like the stick. And I think there's a lot of similarities with Luis Arraez in terms of his stick. He's not quite as polished and as advanced thus far, but I mean, Luis Arraez is the best hitter in the game, so it's a hard measuring stick. But I do wonder for preservation, a bit like with Soler, they preserved him by moving him to the DH spot. Could Luis Arraez maybe full-time DH next year?
I think full-time is probably a bridge too far, but we did discuss during the later parts of the season the idea that if he's going to play, put him in that DH role. Let him have a bit of a break. I mean, we saw him running down first base. He was a broken man in the playoffs.
Yeah, he was cooked.
Fair play to him for sticking it out and giving it a go. But yeah, I mean, he's still young, but he's had a lengthy career now of leg injuries going past into when he was with Minnesota. So there's clearly, I mean, baseball's a tough game, isn't it? They play every day. It's a grind. It's a war of attrition. And I think we're going to have that as well with Jase next year, maybe. He struggled to get on the field every single day. I think the team could use the DH role a bit more intelligently and say that these guys, give them one game a week at DH. And that keeps them in the lineup. It keeps the bat in the lineup. More importantly, I mean, obviously Jase in centre field has proven himself as well. But yeah, I think you could use that DH role, and certainly if the Marlins, maybe they're not looking. I mean, how competitive are they going to be next year? Let's be brutally frank. As I said, there's an avenue for a successful team, and come spring, I will be as high as a kite on the team, saying that they can win 86 games or whatever. But right now, my confidence levels are a little bit low, and maybe a lot of my opinions are tinged with that. But yeah, I think anytime Luis Arraez is in the lineup, the Marlins are a better team. So if that's at second base, at first base, at DH, whatever it is, keeping him in the lineup for 150 plus games is a must.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if that means one game at DH a week, one game at first base a week, let's do it.
You bring up a really great point around the DH spot. If I remember back to the 2020 year, obviously, and Don Mattingly at that point, it was the first time they'd had the DH spot in the NL, and Donnie called it out. I remember him saying the fact that they're just going to use it to cycle guys, just like as a rest situation, where because of the way the roster was constructed last year for the Fish, like they didn't really have that opportunity. Like they basically had to kind of cycle Soler and one of the first base guys into that. That was pretty much it. So to your point, you couldn't really just kind of slide Jase, have a day off here, Jase, out of center field. Louis slide into there as well. Jake Berger, he's another candidate equally, I must say, that could get some DH spot. I think that's less likely, to be honest with you, than maybe some people are thinking. But I think with Luis Arraez, just what we saw visibly was his body just break down the longer it went. And I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not close to the team anymore. But that's what we saw. visibly, we saw him breaking down. Obviously, there was maybe some freak injuries in there. And for me, I'd be looking at this of like, how do I protect my best hitter? And I think there's a strong chance that Luis Arraez could spend a lot more time DHing. Does link to what they do in the offseason, though, because all of a sudden you go and make a move and you actually get a guy who can't field anywhere, or Jacob Berry comes up, for example. You need the DH spot for something else. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued on that Luis Arraez. The other question as well, and this is going to kind of blend into later this week, but from a shortstop perspective, there's an opening there. I still feel the same. I want Arraez in the lineup, and frankly, I want Xavier Edwards in the lineup as often as possible. And frankly, Xavier Edwards is fully blocked by Luis Arraez at this point, in my opinion, unless something changes, i.e. Arraez slides to first, to DH, or... But the other question is, in that shortstop vacancy, Sean, could either of those two guys potentially slide over to shortstop? Like, is it completely out of the realm that Luis Arraez could do a job at shortstop? He was a former shortstop, I believe. Like, I've just talked about protecting his body. I want to move him to short. I mean, that's like completely the opposite thinking. That's Irish thinking. But, is it out of the realm that Luis Arraez takes a few reps at shortstop just to see how it goes? I don't know.
I think for exactly the reason you just mentioned, that we're talking about protecting his body, I don't see it. Edwards as well hasn't really played much shortstop in his time as well. I think one of the more interesting things, and it will be one of the earlier things that we find out because of arbitration, is what happens with Bertie. So he got quite a bit of time at shortstop. The speed, obviously, is fantastic, although it wasn't quite as elite this year as it was the year before. But when you're talking about a player that's earning 3.5, is it this coming year that we're going into, and is a 2 F4 player in limited playing time, like that defense, that speed, this is the Moneyball situation, isn't it? You've got a player that isn't earning much money, putting good performance 2 years running on into the lineup. I think realistically, if the Marlins aren't going to go on an all-out spend, which we know they're not going to, I think Bertie could probably see a lot of time at shortstop. And if they don't go with him, then like the free agency shortstop options, they're just not there. In the minors, which is again talking about the issues that the Marlins have got right now. Like Amaya's there, and I had a lot of enthusiasm for him going into the 2023 season, but didn't have a very good minor league season this year. So he'll get options. He'll come up in spring training and get an opportunity to show something. But I think you need to go into spring training knowing that you can't trust Amaya. So I think the Marlins are going to have to go in with an idea of what they're going to do. And again, me being pessimistic, but he's right there. He's cheap. He's okay.
He's right there.
He can play shortstop. Got the speed. He's a perfect Marlin player, isn't he?
Yes, I wish my camera was working a bit more effectively. For those that are watching, probably like, what the hell's going on, Pete? I don't know the answer. I don't know. Maybe this laptop's about to explode. Who knows? It keeps pausing at inopportune moments. Birdie is right there. Shortstop that's another episode, probably 2 episodes worth of conversation. The Marlins can go in so many different directions there because, well, frankly, they've got 6 players on the roster on the 40-man that have spent time at shortstop, be it at the major league or minor league levels. So there's so many different directions they can go there. I was intrigued to see what they do with Jase as well, because, let's not forget the impact that Jonathan Davis made in Jase's absence. The question is Jonathan Davis still on the roster? Do they, find a way to, either go through arbitration fully or extend him for the minimum 1 year? So will Jonathan Davis be around with no minor league options, which again signals to you like where their heads may be at with roster construction? Equally, does that free Jase up? I don't know. Shortstops, there's so much to get into there, but frankly, it's one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle they need to solve this offseason. But yeah, I think second base and Luis Arraez just generally, I mean, Sean, you also touched on it, like, is he still with the organization? I think the one thing we have to call out here is, again, we're going to spend loads of time on this topic as the offseason progresses, but there's 2 years of control remaining on Luis Arraez now at this point. 2 years. he's getting very expensive by the Marlins standards anyway at this point. He's going to be over 10 million this year. Could be 11, could be 12. I don't know. It's somewhere in that kind of range. The Marlins then have another final year on him. At that point, it's probably going to be 16 to 18 to 20, perhaps. I don't even know. So he's getting very expensive. If the Marlins window looks like it's starting to close at some point, either through 24, in advance of 24, that's one type of guy that you could really get something sizable back in return, right? And I'm not saying that's what they should do, but in terms of the cost being high, control shrinking, and the return, I think GM, president of baseball operations, will have a serious conversation and a serious consideration around that. What about you?
Yeah, add in Sandy coming back in 25 at 17 million. You're looking at 35 plus on two players in an organization that isn't going to go beyond.
It's too high.
Yeah, it's
too
100
high.
to 120. You're paying a third, a quarter of your payroll on two players, and then they only get more expensive.
Sean, I've just also remembered there's also 12 million for Avisail Garcia in there too, in 25.
I'd like to think that they do something this offseason and just find a way to financially get rid of that.
They're going to need to. I mean, the point you've just raised there just even highlights it even more, mate. The fact that you've got Sandy, we're talking about 2025 now, but you've got Sandy at 17, Luis Arraez probably similar number, plus Avisail Garcia's 12 million. Like, boy, oh boy, that's nearly 50 million on three guys for the Marlins when their total spend is going to be circa 100, 110. I mean, this is the problem. This is at the core of why things have gone wonky with Kim, with Bruce, because the conveyor belt is just not being up to scratch. It's unsustainable. Like 50 million on three guys for the Marlins is just way too much. So, we don't want to talk about it because, listen, Luis Arraez is the best hitter in the game. Sandy Alcantara, was a Cy Young a year ago, was still a stud. But the Marlins have to realistically consider the future of both of these guys, which is not really what anyone wants to be thinking about at this point. But they have to do it, don't they?
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the issue we have with the Marlins. Most teams go year to year to year looking at their finances. As a Marlins fan, I've got used to having to go window to window to window. And this window, I mean, I'd feel a lot better if there was Sandy next year. I'd feel an awful lot better about the team's prospects, at least being competitive next year with Sandy. And yeah, it is a case of you've got to look at this window and now say that it's closing. It's not closed, but it's closing. And they're going to have to rocket boost the next window by using these guys to bring in the minors. Because at the moment, the next draft isn't going to fix the system. The draft after that isn't going to fix the system. The draft after that is going to start to fix the system. But then you're looking at another 5 years until they actually get to the major league levels. So this next window is closing, and there is another rebuild on the way, as depressing as that is as a Marlins fan. But there's these two years that the Marlins can be competitive. I think they can be competitive next year, even without Sandy. And then 25 is a quasi all-in. But then you're looking at guys with expiring contracts. So do the Marlins try and extend Luis Arraez? Pay him the money, get 3 or 4 years, lock it in with the Sandy window, and try and force this window a little bit further. There's an option, but that's going to cost money. And the money may be there, but it might not actually be being available. So there's a lot to sort of talk about and a lot to discuss. And I don't want to be too pessimistic about the chances of the Marlins competing in the next 5 to 10 years. But at the moment, a lot of what we're looking for in the future relies on Bruce getting the right guys in and spending when he needs to spend. And we've seen a little evidence of that, but not to the degree that's going to be needed going forwards, I think.
Speaking of spending, guys, It's time to let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. October baseball is back and is really progressing. And you can make your postseason debut if you haven't already with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can join FanDuel today and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create your new account. Then you can get in on the action from the first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. How about those Diamondbacks? Come on, Diamondbacks. And if you don't want to wait the whole game to get the dub, predict what will happen in the next at-bat with quick bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, guys, you're back here with me, Peter Pratt, and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, and I have just about enough time to say thank you for listening. We've run out of time. We've gone way long, as always, but it's been great having the UK GOAT in the house. We mopped up on the last week's news. Bruce Sherman has got one hell of a task on his hands and needs to get creative in terms of who the hire is. The question is how desirable is this Marlins job? Thus, they're going to need to get creative, find guys that are young and hungry and aligned on the direction of the organization. The question then is, what is the direction? And second base, I think, in many ways, is a pillar of that. What are they going to do with Luis Arraez, both now, in the future? Can they extend Luis Arraez? Do they want to extend Luis Arraez? And is Bruce Sherman willing to extend Luis Arraez and commit to him and align his time with Sandy Alcantara to open up and extend this Marlins window? Sean Barrett, I'm confident we'll be back throughout the offseason. There's so many meaty topics to get into. There's so much happening with this Marlins team coming off a stunning 2023 season, a post-series run. An appearance, probably the best description on that one, but a postseason appearance. It was a successful season. But looking ahead, there's a lot of work to do. Nevertheless, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. I'll look forward to seeing you guys on Tuesday and the rest of the week, and I'll see you then.